All right, we are recording. Okay, good evening, everybody. Let's start with a prayer. Father God, we thank you for another opportunity that we can gather and study about different religions, if different faith, not that they are right or they have the truth, but rather we want to understand them so that we can share the gospel, share the truth, the absolute truth of the gospel with these people whom you love. Help us to love them, help us to overcome any sense of prejudice, and may we not be any obstacle in their way of salvation, and help us to uh, approach the people with grace, with love, and with the truth of the Lord Jesus Christ. Bless this time, this class together. Bless all the students, whether they're taking for this course or the other assignment that they have in other courses. We commit our time into your hand. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. All right. Again, greetings to everybody. Before we start, we need to look at the American Indian religion, Native American religion, that we didn't do last week. But before we start, any question so far about the course, about the class? Everybody's okay? Good, okay. Then let's start with our PowerPoint about Native American religion, and then we do have again a good video that we can watch. And the thing I like about this video series is that Dennis Woolley goes and interviews the people who actually practice this religion. In other words, it presents these faith from the perspective of their followers. It's not just from perspective of Christianity. And of course, they have their own bias in what they say, but it is good to get first-hand information from them. So let's go to our PowerPoint on traditional American religion, and let me make that share screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that. You all can see that. Okay, good. Let me make this bigger. Come on. Here you go. Okay. All right. Let me move this to the top here. Okay, when we come to Native American religion or American Indians, we are talking about the tribes that are in North America, in the United States. There are many facets in the religions of Native American, but there is in all the different tribes the concept of a supreme being, the concept of a supreme spirit in sky. They believe in many spirits, spirits of nature, ancestral spirit. They worship and show reverence to different spirits, for example, for river, for forest. And so they have what is called nature spirit. And in this way, they are similar to Zoroastrians. If you remember, in Zoroastrianism, you have a spirit for trees, for mountain, for rivers, for all kind of thing. It's interesting that you find that same concept in American Indian different religions among all of their tribes. They also, one of what is common among them is totemism. Now remember, let me bring that picture. Totemism, we talked about African traditional religion last time. This is one, for example, that's what a totem, that is divided based upon the number of clan in a tribe. and for each clan there is some kind of an animal, bird, ascribed to that tribe. And totemism actually is a way that you divide the society into distinct groups, distinct clans, and each bear the name of an animal or plant, even plants. And each group or clan see itself related to a particular animal or a plant or a bird. Now these, as we mentioned last time, these totem are not idols, but rather they are a visual history of a tribe. There are stories. They tell the story of a tribe, the larger tribe, and help to protect food distribution. For example, if you're a member of a particular clan that has a, let's say, a buffalo as a animal that they bear the name, so then you're not supposed to eat that animal. But another clan that has another animal, has a bird, something else, they can. So in this way, it's some kind of a system of food distribution and food equilibrium for clans that are living in a nature. You see, you have to remember, it's not the case that uh, even now, of course, things have changed, have been modernized, but still, they are very much dependent on nature and what they can hunt and what they can get from the river. So they don't have like grocery stores like Wands or something like this that you can go and buy whatever you want. You can have fruits all through the years, even through the pandemic. Another typical things of the Native American religion is concept of sacred objects. Different objects are considered to be to have special spirits. You see, a mistake that many people do, they think, I remember one time a lady in our church was saying regarding Buddhists that, for example, how could they don't know, for example, this statue has no power, it's just a stone. But you see, remember in our first class, we talked about that there's this belief that these different objects, within them indwells spirit. And actually, the New Testament talks about that. Paul talks about that behind every idol there is a demon. So yeah, there is a spirit, and they believe these objects, because they have these spirit, they're sacred, they have a special power. They're very much into visions. They are not, again, a text-oriented religions, and very much into vision, very much into rituals, especially rites of passage from birth to puberty, marriage, all that, death. That these are very important in Native American religion. As far as deity and the supreme spirit is concerned, there are three levels of spiritual beings: the supreme God, then they have all these nature spirits, and then they have ancestral spirits. And so you can see a trace of a belief in a supreme creator God in these American Indian religions. A trace of the original monotheistic belief, and they usually believe this among different tribes. They may have different names for this supreme God, but they believe he's in the sky. It's interesting. They always point towards heaven. Now, this supreme spirit, he's in control of a supreme power. Therefore, even if there is no direct knowledge of this supreme God, there are still a resemblance of him in relationship to its power in the world. So even though the personality of this supreme God has lost its meaning, but manifestations of its power exist in this world for typical American Indian. Um, uh, Again, this supreme spirit manifests itself by physical entity, like an animal or like a bird, eagle, earth, sun. They look at these things as manifestation of this supreme spirit, which you can find some traces of that. Now, I'm not saying exact equivalent, but resemblance, traces of that in the book of Romans chapter 1, when in Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through, let me get to that, 18 through 21, uh, when Paul talks about the judgment of God and the reason for the judgment of God. And he gives reason that this judgment is not irrational. It's because man has rejected God and has rejected the knowledge of true God, even though they had access to that. And his attribute was manifested in the nature. For example, let me read from Romans 1, chapter 1, verse 18. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse." Verse 19 and 20 make it clear that, the true God, the triune God, his attributes have been manifested and they have been seen throughout centuries in the nature, in our own creation, in our conscious, and in the creation around us, so that people are without excuse if they respond to the light that God has given to them, and excuse me, then God will give them more light that eventually will lead them to the Lord Jesus Christ. Without Christ, there is no salvation, there is no redemption. But as I respond to this much light has been given to me, then God gives me more light and more light till he will guide and lead me as I respond positively to his guidance toward Christ. So when we have in American Indian, they believe that manifestation or representation of this supreme spirit is seen in earth, sun, eagles, different animals. It's not, you can see traces of that, similarities between that and what Paul is talking about in Romans chapter 1. Of course, what Paul says in Romans chapter 1 is in a kind of a negative sense. It's in the sense of saying that because of this, humankind is condemned before God, because they could know God, the true God, and they could come to the knowledge of Christ if they respond positively. So, um, uh, so again, like what we talked in chapter 1, from worship of the Creator, the original uh, uh, monotheistic God, they drifted away, recognizing the Creator power uh, in the physical world along other spirits. Now here comes those nature spirits. And here's a classical case of degradation of monotheistic belief to polytheism. Well, first of all, from monotheism to henotheism. Remember, henotheism was you have one supreme God among many, and you see that moving that way, and then eventually you just have polytheism, a group of gods, and even then you have some evil spirits gain equal status and power as the supreme God. So you have appearance of what is called a trickster in the American Indian religions, and they try to please the creator, and you see the worship of the creator degrades to pleasing the creator, because now this creator is become some kind of a capricious spirit, and actually what you have a good spirit and you have a bad spirit. You have a good spirit, and then you have a trickster. So you see that. I hope you can see the degradation of the worship of the monotheistic God. Any question so far? No? Okay. Uh, Now, when we come to our modern times, what we have is a movement among Native American. It's called Native American Church. There have been many missionaries and many, solid biblical Christian churches and mission organizations that have tried to work among American Indians. One of the problems that our textbook talks about that, and it's interesting, he was cautioned by others, and he cautions us that when you want to do research about American Indians, there is what is called among them a policy of deliberate misdirection. And they do that because they feel that, outsiders, people like us, we may, kind of bring disrespect or irreverence to their spirits. So they intentionally try to mislead and misdirect those who are trying to study their religion, American Indian religion. But Native American Church is a syncretic movement, unfortunately. It's a mixture of some things from Bible and some things from, pagan American Indian tradition. It centers around the sacrament of peyote cactus, which is a drug. Peyote is a form of a cactus, and they extract a drug from it, and they use that in their religious service. Is a mixture of native religion, Christian belief, traditional practices. And the central thing is the sacrament of peyote cactus. Now, this is a big problem, no, not just among, working among Native American, but among almost all people in the mission field. Especially what I know in the work among the Muslim people, the problem of syncretism. What do you think about this movement, and what do you think about, I'd like to know your opinion about the difference between contextualization and syncretism. Could you explain that for me, someone? Where?
Okay, I'll say something. I think that anytime that we allow a tribe or a different religion to incorporate their previous beliefs, the sacraments that they've used, and remove the truth, any of the truth of the gospel, that we're allowing them to have a misunderstanding of what the gospel is really saying. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. Then let me follow with another question. Then what should we do in order to properly contextualize the message of the Bible without falling into syncretism? What can we do in order, if you are talking about to American Indians or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist or whatever, so that the message is understandable to them, but at the same time, we are not mixing the truth with falsehood?
Well, and I'll continue also. I think that one of the hardest things about sharing the gospel with other people is, for example, when we are talking to someone who wants to become a Christian, and because I've not spoken to a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Baha'i, um, I can't use anyone else as an example, but let's say I'm talking to an unbeliever, and I know that that person is involved in, let's say, unchristian like practice, like pornography or gambling or something like that. The idea is to move them away from things that are hindering their true relationship with Christ.
Okay.
And so, if that's something that as a Christian, we and a believer, we would need to do with someone of another religion. Maybe that's the way to go. I'm still kind of new to the whole missionary concept,
Okay.
so
No, that's very good. That's good. So basically, what you have done, you are looking at the life of that person. Now, you use the example of a generic non-believer. Okay, you look at the life of that person, and you try to analyze and see what are some belief or practices that hinder uh, the the work of the Holy Spirit, hinder the work of the Spirit, that the Holy Spirit uses the Word of God in the life of this person, and we try to um, eliminate those, or talk to the person that these things are wrong and remove these, or these are okay, but here these things, for example, the example that you gave, they are uh, obvious sins. Definitely there is no question that if person is involved with pornography or gambling, things like this are very clear. But if something which is not that um, obvious, it's mm, what should we do with them? And then of course we come to the case of people of other cultures. uh, what do you think about those cases? Of course murder is wrong, like as we study about Hinduism, one of the things that uh, missionaries for a long time ago they did, and it was because of the efforts of the missionary like William Carey, that some of the practices like burning a widow with her deceased husband was stopped in India, and of course with the backing and enforcement from British. But those things are obvious. This is wrong. Burning a person alive is wrong. Uh, well, what can we do? Like if, for example, these American Indians, they're somehow in their tradition, they have some attachment to the sacrament of peyote cactus. Um, how should we approach that?
Professor, I think the first thing to do is to, when you're going to talk to a group of people, is to understand their background. Right now, I don't know what the whole thing is about this peyote cactus. So if I know that I'm going to be going in an area where I might encounter people with this backgrounds, to know what they do and why they do it. The other thing that comes to my mind is Paul's example in Areopagus, when he goes and talks to the people there, and he uses that one statue that they had to the unknown God,
Yeah, yeah,
and he
that,
takes it and he uses it and he preaches the gospel.
yes.
So it is seizing the moment from within them,
Okay.
within their culture. Like I spoke to a Hindu friend of mine a long time ago, and we were talking about, you know, the rebirth and the reincarnation and how the cycle just goes on and on. And I said, and I took that moment to talk to her about, well, I have assurance that at the end of my life, where I'm going, what about you?
Okay. Good.
And so just I think knowing the background of the people that we're going to talk to, and you bring in the missionaries. And I grew up in India, and the missionaries, well, I didn't grow up at the time those missionaries were there, but my parents did. And the missionaries spend a lot of time just knowing the culture, knowing the people,
Yeah.
knowing the language, being like them in many ways, but not in faith, and then approaching them with the truth. So if you just go and hit somebody on the head and say, "You're wrong, I'm right," they'll just say, "Well, so what?"
Yeah, yeah, okay. So, in other words, what you're talking about is you got to do analytical contextualization. Like, for example, this you made a comment regarding this practice of peyote cactus sacrament among American. They basically they gather in their so-called worship services, and they extract from that cactus a drug, and they use that. It's just like some kind of a like all these different illegal drugs, and they use that in their worship to kind of get a sense of they become high in other words, uh, uh, um, and they feel that they are making connection with the spirit world, which you do, but with kind of a bad spirit world. um, um, so if we, let's say, if I'm a missionary, I want to work among American Indians, I do research about this sacrament of peyote cactus. What do they do? And when I see that, okay, if it's been used as a drug and for hallucination and all that, well, I said, no, no, this is wrong, because that opens your mind. I explain it to them, because, it's not enough to just say, don't do that, but I have to explain it to them, because that opens your mind, that opens your spirit to evil spirits. Because any form of drugs, what it does, it turns off um, God-given defense system. God has implanted in us some kind of a defense system. Why things like these kind of drug is bad? Why, beside damage physically human mind, human brain and body, or why other practices like trying to empty your mind and get to some kind of a status of making contact with the spiritual beings. Why these things are wrong? Because by emptying your mind, you are turning off the defense mechanism that God has implanted in our mind, in our spirit, against evil spirits. And they get a foothold in our lives, in our souls. So you look at a practice and see whether that practice, is it only cultural, or does it have spiritual religious meaning? And is it possible to purify it or not? Uh, a good example that we use here in this country, in this culture, the Christmas tree. Well, originally Christmas tree came from Germany and was part of worshiping a pagan idol. Um, but throughout history, that Christmas tree came to symbolize and was used for the birth of Christ. Now, another thing is that we know that 25th of December is not the birth of Christ. That's basically a traditional date that churches have agreed to have a date for the birth of Christ, which used to be a date for one of the gods of Roman Empire before Constantine conversion to Christianity. But is it bad? Is it wrong to celebrate Christmas on December 25th? Is it wrong to have a Christmas tree? No, because we have um, accepted the fact, we know we don't, our focus is not on the 25th of December, our focus is on the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ into this world. And the Christmas tree, we use it only as decoration. We don't bow down before it or worship it. Now, I know there are some Christian groups who are against even having Christmas tree, which is fine. They can have, it's okay if that's their conviction, if that's how their conscience leads them. But I personally don't have any problem with the Christmas tree or celebration of Christmas on December 25th. Same way, I have told you before, like in the Persian Iranian culture, there is a feast which is common not just in Iran, it's among the Kurdish people, among different people in Central Asia. Uh, I think even part of India, they celebrate that. The Parsis and in Kashmir, the Nowruz, the 21st of March, the spring equinox. In Iran, that's a national holiday and at the beginning of the new year. The calendar is based upon that. Originally, the roots of it goes back to Zoroastrianism. Now, uh, we celebrate that, we even celebrate that in our church, not anything to do with Zoroastrian religion or any of that, but just as a cultural thing for the new year, for Persians, Iranians. Um, and when they have a very elaborate table that they put different items on it. Well, among the items we put on that table, we put a copy of Holy Bible, and we thank God the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So you can take some elements from a culture which is not a Christian culture, and even take some rituals and custom that were not originally Christian, and filter it through the Bible, and then present it in a biblical way for Christian community, like the Nowruz, like the Christmas tree, like the uh, celebration December 25th. Yes.
Professor, um, I grew up in India, and as you know, Christians are a very small percentage of it. Growing up, we had all these festivals. When we get to Hinduism, all the festivals that were being celebrated. But for me, it was very important because everything had such a religious connotation to it that if someone came up to me and said Happy Holi or Happy Diwali, it was very difficult for me to say that back, because I knew that the underlying cause of it is something that I don't believe in. And even during the Eid, my Muslim friends would say Happy Eid or something, and then I would find some other way of going around it. So I just felt that for me to come here, I feel very Indian in certain ways, and then in certain ways I feel very alienated from the Indian culture, because my culture is some aspects of it are so deeply rooted in their religion that I just cannot be part of that, because for me then doing that would be putting Christianity on the side. If I were to go into that, it's just has been a big struggle for me growing up. Like some of the traditional Indian dances and traditional Indian singing, and my mother would never allow me to do that because they were always uh, done to a god, a deity, and she said there's no way you're learning any of it.
Yep.
So I think we have to be like, maybe for Nowruz it's not that big, but when we get to some place like India, which it was very hard for me to be part of that, and call that being an Indian. I still feel very alienated when it comes to all of these Diwali celebrations. There's a huge celebration in San Diego, and I just can't get myself to go there.
I understand. I understand that very well, because I come in a way similar to your situation. I come from Iran. I come from a Muslim background, from a country which is predominantly Muslim, Shiite Muslim, and I converted. I came to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, and that is an issue for a number of converts to Christianity from Iran. You're right. You see, that's why you have to go case by case. You cannot make a general statement about Nowruz. The thing about Nowruz is interesting is because even inside Iran, it is not Islamic, and it's not even many people have no idea about its Zoroastrian roots. Uh, it's been, even when I was growing up, it was just a family time, a cultural time, nothing religious in it. The only thing religious about it was they would put a copy of Quran, if they were Muslim, on that tape, because part of the Nowruz is definitely you are supposed to set a table with some elaborate item, and they just put a copy of Quran in the middle of that, but they would never read it or do anything. Uh, so we can take that and uh, instead of Quran, we put the Bible, and even the items that are on that table, they put a plate of flowers and grass as a sign of fertility. Now, of course, in the Zoroastrian religion, it's directed toward uh, spirits who are gods of fertility or spirits for agriculture, but we don't look at it that way. We give honor and adoration to God the Father for blessings. Same way, I would say with the Christmas tree. Uh, um, there are churches who don't like to use Christmas tree, and there are churches who do. Shadow Mountain does, and many other churches. Again, it is not the uh, we can take things and change them if it's possible. Because one thing I would say, now again, I'm not saying that those ritual that you mentioned, those Indian dancing or festivity, because those are very much um, oriented toward different gods in Hindu religion. But one thing to remember, I like that hymn, "This is my Father's word." So I take back Satan, the usurper, has taken these beautiful things from God's creation. We take it back. It belonged to God. Um, uh, even, I mentioned the term God in our language that we use originally came from the name of a pagan deity among the Germanic tribe. So the content can be changed. That's my point. There's a book, remember, Melanie, we had that in our course when you took the cultural anthropology. There's a book by Dr. Hebert. He was, I didn't have him, but he was teaching at my seminary, or my old seminary at Trinity in Chicago. Uh, uh, anthropological Insight for Missionaries by Dr. Hebert, Baker publication. It's a very good book, and in it, in fact, he goes a couple of chapters discussing about contextualization, analytical contextualization, how to, so that the message of the gospel is understandable for the hearer without syncretism, without defiling the content, the message with things that are not biblical. But let me share.
Professor, I just want to share one more thing.
Sure.
And even, within the Christian circles here, when my son was 5 years old, he was in kindergarten class, and it was Christmas time, and everybody was talking about Santa Claus. And so he went to his friends and said, well, that's your parents who put the cookies. Oh, they eat the cookie and the milk, and they put the presents under the tree. And he was 5 years old, and he goes, no. The friend said, no, there's Santa Claus, and he lives in the North Pole. And so my son said, well, North Pole is all ice. Where do you think he lives? Underwater? He was hauled to the principal's office, and this is a Christian school. I was called in because the children were very traumatized. So I asked the principal, I said, what do you want me to tell him? Do you want me to tell him that Santa Claus is real? I cannot do that.
Yeah.
If the kid says that it's not real, he's right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why
I
would...
would say, with our kids, we had that tradition of cookies and all that. But as they grew up, we told them, it's just story. It's a fable. Don't believe, don't believe it. But just a fun thing. I wanted to share this because, like when you said, you will have either sometime Hindu friend or Muslim friend would come to you and say happy Eid, like Eid al-Fitr, or different festivity with the Hindu. If they do that, for me, they usually know because who I am and what I do, so they usually don't do that with me. But I have told this to people, are different, regular church members, that if somebody comes and like the Eid al-Fitr, that at the end of Ramadan, and say they say congratulations to you, or they bring food for you, I take it. I don't have any problem.
The food I keep, the food I'll take. But it's just saying back. But for Diwali, which is a festival of light, when they say Happy Diwali to me, I take that and I say, may the real light illuminate your life. And I hope someone will question me on that one of these days, what I mean by it.
But you know what I would do, if, again, this is my suggestion. When somebody comes, and even if they come and tell me happy Eid al-Fitr or something like that, I will thank them. I would say thank you. Because you see, they say that not out of malice.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trying to insult me or hurt me or mislead me. They do that out of generosity, out of goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank them, and in fact, if they bring food, I take the food and I eat the food. I pray in the name of the Lord Jesus, and I eat the food. You see, that's a question in Romans chapter 14 that Paul talks about that. So if it bothers you, don't eat it. But if it doesn't bother you, well, eat it. Just don't do something that causes stumbling block for a brother or a sister. But I would use, for example, just like the comment that you said, even for the Festival of Lights, when they come and say a happy Festival of Light to you, I would say, well, thank you, but do you know the true light? Let me tell you the true light. John chapter 1, you can say the light came into the world, the light of the world. I wouldn't say may the true light vanishes your light. That becomes kind of a like starting a fight with them. I wouldn't do that. I would just say, well, let me show, you're celebrating Festival of Lights, but let me tell you, there is one true light, and I will take that as an opportunity to talk about the gospel. In the Eid al-Fitr, because you see, they sacrifice a lamb and they bring it to your home. I tell them, I challenge them, why do you guys do that? Where does this custom come from? Do you know? And most of them, they don't know, have no idea. They have no clue. And I go to Gospel of John, to the testimony of John the Baptist. This is the Lamb of God. Behold, the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. And I, use that as an opportunity to share the gospel. I don't know if I'm making sense. Okay.
Yeah. No. It makes a lot of sense, because even in Iran, people are very strongly religious, or whatever they religious beliefs they hold on to. And I run into the same problems when I'm talking with Indians, because they're very religious people. You find very few atheists. They're mostly very religious people. So when you're talking to them, they believe in God. They believe in a higher power, and the more they progress in life, the more spiritual they'll become. So it's a very different kind of people and mindset that we have to deal with than what we see here in US. It's a very different mindset.
Yeah, but for example, where I draw the line is when I see that that participation in that practice can lead to some kind of a compromise,
Yeah.
or I'm misleading the other person. For example, if they ask me, invite me to come to a mosque or
Mhm.
a Zoroastrian temple for the worship, I decline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Respectfully, I decline. Um, uh, I will explain to them again respectfully, um, but but when there is, for example, a funeral,
Mhm.
uh, if I have a time, I would go, and I just, out of respect for the person and their family, I participate in that, but I don't participate in their acts of
The
worship.
ritual. Mhm.
For example, a year ago, yeah, it was a year ago, there was a man right here in town in San Diego. He was a prominent person among the Zoroastrian community in Iran. He was the head of a major university, University of Shiraz, which Shiraz is a major city in Iran. And he was Zoroastrian. And then after the revolution, he came here to United States. He died a year ago, right here in San Diego. I knew him because I went to that university for 1 year. He was my president of my university, and my wife knew him too. So when he died, we went to his the Zoroastrian temple up in Orange County. But we sat and
Right.
participated
Mhm.
in what they were doing. I mean, we sat and watched, but we
Yeah.
didn't do the rituals.
Right. Right. Mhm.
Um, uh, like, you see, maybe if that helps, um, regarding the issue of uh, contextualization and syncretism, the book of Daniel is an excellent book on that, especially chapter 1. You see, when they brought Daniel and his friends to the court of Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, uh, they changed their names. They put names of Babylonian gods on them. They didn't care. They just, well, you can change our name, but that's not going to change who we are. We are still who we are. And I say that because, I see that among Iranian Christians, those who have converted to Christianity. This happens lots of time. They want to change their name. And I ask them, well, why do you want to do it? Like the guy name is Muhammad or Ali. Now he has become a Christian. He wants to change his name. I tell them, don't do. I mean, why? Why do you want to do that? Unless you don't like your name, but why? Why not? I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing to have a person named Muhammad in a church, and he's a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. I think that's a great testimony. I mean, why do you want to change your name to Paul and Peter and whatever? Uh, uh, and also I mentioned, just changing, because some people change, among Iranian Christian community, I notice parents, they put biblical names on their kids, which is fine. But remember, just putting that name upon them is not going to change them. Like many people I know, they put the name Daniel, is because Daniel is also related to Iran. His tomb is in Iran right now. They put the name Daniel. I said, well, that's great, but if you want your kid to become Daniel of God, you got to work with him. Um, so they changed the name of Daniel and his friends. They didn't care. They told them that you have to study our culture, our science, or different things about our culture. They didn't mind. They draw the line when they were told that you have to eat the foods of the king. They said no, that's where they draw the line. And the reason was because that's where the Bible draw the line, because those food, if eating them would violate dietary requirements of the Old Testament, beside the fact that those foods usually were, they were given to gods, But I don't think that was the real reason, because like Romans 14, you could pray and eat the food, doesn't matter. I think the real reason was because those foods were not kosher, in other words. And that's where Daniel and his friend draw the line. So draw the line where the Bible draws the line. Uh, that's a thing to remember. But whether we are talking about Native American, Hindus, Muslim, or whatever religious group, you got to study the culture, contextualize the message in a way that is understandable for them, without syncretism, without um, mixing the truth of the Bible with falsehood in that faith, in that religion. Any question? No, things clear. Okay, let me see. What time is it right now? All right, we have time. Let's watch the video that we have on Native Americans. Okay. All right. Share screen. Okay, one moment. I have to go. All right. Let me put this on share screen here. Okay, can you guys see that? Anyway, everybody can see this? Okay. All right, let's then watch it.
Hi, folks. I'm Dennis Foley. Welcome to I Believe. Each week we're on location, visiting a different church, synagogue, mosque, temple, or house of worship to learn about that religion or faith. This week, a special edition of I Believe. We've come to the National Museum of the American Indian on the Mall in Washington, D.C., part of the Smithsonian Institution, to learn about the religions of Native Americans. Thank you for joining us. I Believe is made possible by the Rotendaro Family Trust, the CTC Foundation, the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington, Americans United, and the National Education Association. Suzanne, 30 years ago, you were involved in the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. What was that all about?
Many years ago, in the 1880s, the United States issued what they called the Civilization Regulations that outlawed all native religions, all ceremonies. You couldn't dance. It confined you to reservations, cut off your access to the public, what's now the public domain, but where a lot of our sacred places are. So those were in place until the 1930s. And then during that time, many of the Indian religions were driven underground, and a lot of them were driven to extinction. So in the 1970s, when Jimmy Carter was a candidate, Native people really wanted this law, something that would make a difference in Indian country and take away that fear that this kind of regulation, this kind of banning of our people's religions would not be done again. And he, during his campaign, said that he would do that. He would sign the law, and so he did, and that's great.
You used in your answer the word religions, and I was thinking as I was preparing for our conversation, so many tribes, so many nations. By nations, tribes had their own nations. So many religions, huh?
Yes, probably about 1,000 different religions within what's now the United States boundaries. And today there are probably about 300 religions.
Do we have any sense, are there census figures as to how many Native Americans there are in the United States now?
A little over 2 million. Now that sounds like a very small population, and it is in one way, but when you think that in 1900 we were 250,000, you can tell that we were close to extinction ourselves.
Is there a common denominator, or are there common denominators amongst the various tribal religions?
Most of the tribal religions are place-based, so they depend on certain locations for their most important ceremonies. It could be a place called Holy Mountain. It could be a place called Niagara Falls. There are particular places that compel people to pray at them, and that goes for all people. And so Native people are the same way. There's one place, Bear Butte, which the Cheyenne people call Holy Mountain, that's important to 60 different nations. And the only rule about going to Bear Butte is that you don't carry any weapons there. Everyone puts down their weapons and leaves their bad thoughts behind.
You have now used the word nations, as I did in one of my questions. It's difficult for some people to conceive or understand that way back when there were nations throughout this entire land. Different. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, of course, it was all native lands, and today there are still nations. We are smaller. We're not as populous. We don't have as much land, but we are sovereignties, and we're the only constitutionally named sovereignty besides the United States and the states in the Constitution.
When we're talking about the nations and their are nations and tribes, is that synonymous?
If you will.
If you will. So it could be a nation's religion or a tribal religion. And you mentioned the sacred places. Is all that we know about the Native American religions passed down through art or oral tradition or through objects and pictures on objects? How do we know about what happened?
The native religions are passed down through oral history. That's right. It's an oral tradition. But a lot is known about us because we have so many anthropologists assigned to us. And of course, during the time when it seemed like we would go extinct, at the end of the 1800s, that was about the time when anthropology was coming into its own. And it was the time when recordings were coming into their own, wax cylinders and even film and photographs. And so people would go out and interview our elders, our holy people. And on some of the wax cylinders, which are in the Library of Congress, even if you don't know the language, you can hear tall tales being told. So some people were kind of fooling the anthropologist and saying, "Oh yes, and another thing."
as would be true with all people.
That's right.
So when you're talking about the cylinders, what period of time are we talking about there?
1880.
Is that right?
Right.
Oh, okay. When again, to go back to the holy places and what we've learned through the oral histories, what would happen there? Would it be a gathering of many people over a number of days or weeks or a weekend, or how did that all work?
Well, over several days, several nights, there are ceremonies that take place, usually have a lot of preparation to them. So you might have people who have to go out and gather willows, or go out and get medicine flowers, or a particular kind of animal to bring to a feast, or to prepare the people, particular kind of tea that people drink, the sassafras tea, for example. So preparation is all, and you get people in the right frame of mind, which means a receptive frame of mind to be able to listen to everything that's around you and be able to meditate, if you will, and listen for instructions from creation.
In this day and age, how many people might go to a religious ceremony or festival?
Well, it depends on the number of people in that nation to begin with. And not everyone in a particular culture practices the traditional religion. And some nations have no religions because of that horrible criminalizing of our religions for so long that they no longer exist. But what happens is you have a number of people going to a particular place and doing a ceremony which may or may not be open to the public, or part of it may be open to the public. The pueblos, for example, in New Mexico and some in Arizona have open feast days, and they invite people to come in and eat, and you just go from house to house. And they will, so all of their ceremonies appear to be very public. However, there's a lot of preparation time, and there are certain kinds of activities that take place in absolute privacy, and that's as it should be. And why? Because that's the way they do it. And some of our religions have tenets that prohibit disclosure of certain kinds of things. Also, there are some activities that are not public because of our historic inhibition about being criminalized again just for believing in a certain way or practicing in certain kinds of activities.
Let me ask you some kind of basic questions. Amongst the various tribal religions, is there a concept of a supreme being?
Almost all, yes. For the Cheyennes, we say the Great Mysterious or the Great Mystery. And why, no one knows what it is.
Yeah.
You just know that it's a very powerful one being. So different religions have different ways of looking at the cosmos. And for some, there isn't a centralized being, but there are lots and lots of helpers that help creation generally.
Are they gods and goddesses in a way, or you wouldn't put that label on them?
I would say not so elevated. They're just sacred beings.
Sacred beings.
And they could be something that is like a person, or something that is bigger than a person. I was at a Forest Service meeting with Hopi Kikmunges one time, and the Forest Service people were trying to figure out how much territory would be covered by a particular ceremony, and they say, well, you say your gods walk around the San Francisco peaks, how big are their feet? It was a total cultural disconnect. So they might be, there might be a sacred being that people are instructed to go out and see before a ceremony, and not even have it around, but to be able to witness it. So you might some people might be dispatched to make sure that that they have seen an eagle, or they've seen a hawk, or they've seen a red-tailed hawk, or they've seen a fox, or a certain kind of being.
In the service of?
In the service of instruction, of visioning. So someone might see a woodpecker that's not doing what it should be doing. And that might be a very important bit of information to come back with and say, the woodpecker's in trouble. And why is that? And so people will know that something has happened to that particular tree that's important to the woodpecker.
So what I'm hearing now is that nature plays a huge role amongst the religions of the Native Americans. Is that true?
Absolutely. The first instructions for most Native peoples have to do with for the Cheyennes, for example, the first instruction is to walk gently through life. So you go through life doing what the doctors are supposed to do. You cause no harm.
Okay.
So that's your first instruction. But you have a particular duty to do things for the water, or to do things for your part of the garden.
Is there a concept that we should be knowing about that relates to life? You just talked about it in instruction for life. Death or afterlife, are those some things that are unique or special to the Native Americans?
There are. Everything is so varied. I mean, it's hard to make a generalization, and sometimes it's hard to talk about something very, very specific. So I'll just say that among the instructions are those for how to be in a certain place, how to behave, and what you do to achieve the kind of balance that you're looking for. And Native religions always turn on balance and harmony. You're trying to achieve a certain compatibility with your surroundings and with other people, and to reach understandings. So there is that kind of instruction to, again, to walk gently through life, to help each other, to encourage each other.
And to be kind to the natural surroundings as well.
Absolutely. And that is something that human beings are supposed to do, is to not cause problems for the other creatures, to not cause problems for Mother Earth, and then to fix what we can. And there are certain things that are beyond repair, but there are certain things that are well within your ability to fix. And I like to think that Native America has helped inform and instruct and shape and cause the articulation of the environmental movement. Just understanding, the minute you say that the earth is your mother, you have a different relationship to the earth, and that you have come from this, and you're returning to it, and that we are all the same. And when you understand your connectedness to creation, when you understand your connectedness to other people, then you begin to have a sense of responsibility, and you're looking more at what can I do to help this situation, and less at how can I do what I want to do no matter what.
It must have been, when you add up a number of things, the idea of taking away the religious freedom, the takeover and the destruction of all of the lands, the living on the reservations, and then the almost destruction of the environment. must have been heartbreaking for the Native Americans to watch and experience all of this happening at the same time. And what great fortitude to have come through to where we are today, huh? Where there's some rays of hope, huh?
It remains heartbreaking.
Uh-huh.
For the Cheyennes, there's no past tense in the Cheyenne language, in the Gista language. There is present and future tense. So everything either is or is becoming. And when you look at life in that way, everything is immediate and everything is tomorrow. So the things that have happened in our past are not in our past. They're tomorrow. They're possibly this moment happening again. So you learn to be wary. You learn to be concerned, to be watchful, and to be hopeful as well. For our Cheyenne people, the first job of the women is to be hopeful. We have people say that this is a saying, but it is an instruction. Sorry to keep using that word, but that it is.
I like it.
It's that the nation shall be strong so long as the hearts of the women are not on the ground. And that's a very, that instructs the women in how to be optimistic, to be hopeful, to be looking for a way to do it no matter what, whatever it is, whatever is required. And it provides an instruction to the men about how to treat women. Not, we're not talking about keeping everyone happy here, but to honor each other, to honor the women as the life givers and as the keepers of history. It's part of that balance that most of our Native peoples are seeking. So when we look at what has happened, we look at it as a tragedy, but we also look at it for what we can do to make sure that it won't happen again, and how do we go forward in a way that will repair the damage.
I gather that the earliest ceremonies in some of the earlier religions were focused on hunting animals, and you mentioned, and then we were talking a little bit about how some of the ceremonies are focused on the sacred places and the land. It's something that rattling around in my mind that I can't quite put my finger on, is how we can understand what happened when the white man, when the Christian, how that influenced in a way the Native American religions. How does that play out today, I guess?
There was a very great prophet for the Cheyennes whose name was Sweet Medicine, and he said the hairy-faced people would come and they would make lines all across Mother Earth, and they would, and many people have interpreted this as the railroads and utility lines and highways and the like, and they would even make the waters go in a different path. And because of these lines, that it would be like a spider's web. And so the Cheyenne, the Gista word for the white man is veho, is spider. And it's because of those webs across Mother Earth and into Mother Earth and the damage that does. Now, can we get from one place to another faster? Sure. Did they bring Shakespeare? Sure, and great. What it did, though, was what Sweet Medicine predicted, turn night into day and cause the killings of some of our people at dawn. And because of the gold rock, we're told so much that we're still understanding. Now, how did that help us? I don't know. I don't know how it helped us. I do know that we have been recovering from a long nightmare for a long time, and that we still have a very long way to go. I also think that we're going to be here a long time. The Cheyennes didn't come from Asia, and that we don't believe that we did. We can sort of point to the place where we were set down. The Zunis can point to the place where they emerged, and their language is like no other language in the world. The linguists say this is an anomaly. So there are lots of mysteries about origin and where people came from, and who knew who, when, and how far back you go to be related or not related. What I'm most concerned about, and I think most traditional Native peoples are concerned about today, is how do we go forward in a way that doesn't cause any further damage to our people? How do we make a better world for our great-great-grandchildren? How are we going to do that? We have to do it together. We can't do it alone. We're not linguistic isolates. We're not cultural isolates. No one is in this world. We're so involved in each other's lives and so dependent on each other. We need to know, what the non-Indians need to know from us and learn very quickly is how to find water. We know things about our part of the world that a lot of people, other people don't know. Now, it's not that we just need to start teaching the non-Indians these things. It's that people need to respect our traditions and understand that the Native people who are here are pretty precious. We're the modern evidence of ancient cultural continuums. And we know a lot about our part of the world. And we intend to be here a long, long time.
Last question. What does your faith mean to you?
Well, I think it's the stuff of confidence and the measuring stick for everything else. What's important? How important is this to do? Is it as important as that? Religious obligations are good to have. I think in everyone's faith, in everyone's religion, it just gives you something to do that is unforgiving, an unforgiving deadline, that you just have to do it, and that's all there is to it. And you can put everything else aside, and it'll all be there when you get back. So I think that for me, if we didn't have the comfort of religion, I don't know how we could bear all that's happening, or how we could make joyous people in our time and in the future. It would not be possible without our religions.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
To learn more about
Okay,
this series, visit our...
All right, let me stop that. Okay, how did you like the interview? Any comments you would like to make or any question? You know, I want to make a couple of comments. The last thing that the lady said about that prophet, sweet medicine, that he prophesied that people would come and draw lines on earth, and related that to coming of the Europeans and making the railroad lines, telegraph lines, power lines, everything. And the sense I got from that conversation was kind of these things, even though they have their advantages, but they were overall kind of negative because they have damaged the Mother Earth. Okay, you see, but here's the problem. I believe this kind of thinking, that's why this kind of thinking has direct impact on your social and economical status. Uh, why there are, why American Indians are, um, they're backward. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry to say that. I know I realize many injustices. I realize, the genocides, killing, and all that. I realize that, but I don't think. I personally, I'm not a person that would like the kind of a victim mentality. Even though others may have done bad things to us, but we are responsible for our actions. By God's grace, we can make improvement. But if you have this thinking that by drilling a tunnel in the heart of a mountain, I'm hurting the Mother Earth, and by putting a railroad tracks on Earth, I'm hurting the Mother Earth. Well, you are not going to progress. And contrast that with Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. When God created Adam and Eve, we read God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on earth. It says, be fruitful and multiply, and subdue the earth, fill the earth and subdue it. Now, I agree. I don't think that means to abuse the earth. I don't think that means to pollute the earth or damage the earth. But it does, in fact, that's a command from our God, the true God, to progress. You see, when it says, be fruitful and multiply, I don't think those two terms are different. Um, there's a fantastic book. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but Total Truth. Total Truth. I encourage you to get that. Nancy Pearcey. It's an excellent book to read. And she talks about that. And in fact, she goes back to this command in Genesis 1:28 and says, many people, when they read that fruitful and multiply, they think that only it's about having children. Well, but it repeats twice. Why it doesn't need to be repeated twice. The fruitful part, and it is true even linguistically in Hebrew language, mean it's different than multiply. Multiply, yes, of course, have children. Human race must grow. But be fruitful actually means to bring fruits of cultural fruits, bring positive thing, improve your culture, improve your society. And subdue the earth, not that to abuse the earth. So you see the contrast between biblical view of nature and traditional American Indian, and it's the same thing. You find that among Zoroastrian, among number of, we will talk about Hinduism in the second part of the session tonight. Among number of branches within Hinduism, that they think that no, you should not touch the earth. The result you will remain backward. Uh, so you see how religious thinking can have impact. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, didn't want to butt in, but the thing that what struck me was a couple of things. She said that this is all oral traditions that are passed down from, and they're very ancient people, yes, and orally they have passed it down, but she herself said that sometimes the stories are embellished, and so you really don't know what it started with and what it is that you're hearing now, because there's no way to go back and proof check what was the original thing that was passed down. And then she said that their way has always been to try and achieve a balance and always try to fix what can be fixed. So that's a lot of burden on just human beings to try and fix the earth, and a lot of burden is to, you know, have a balance, because we're just not that smart, I think. And the other thing is that came to me was uh, when he asked her, what does the faith mean to you? And she said, well, it means confidence. And she didn't really elaborate on where she gets that confidence, for what, and confidence because of what. And then she says, well, it's kind of like a measure of what needs to be done, and something needs to be done, and it tells me what needs to be done. And through it all, I think her main focus was, like you said, was on the earth and how badly the earth has been, damaged. But where I go to, Professor, was that came to my mind verses in Romans where it says that the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself will be delivered from bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole earth groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves grown within ourselves, eagerly awaiting the redemption of our bodies. And I think if I were to talk to her, I would take the Genesis passage and this passage and say, hey, it's all going to come together.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, yes, I have to do my best, but there's someone who is going to put it all together and going to fix it.
And you see, notice like what you mentioned, and it came from her talk, that they seek balance and harmony
Yes.
with nature and with others. So that means, that implies that there is an imbalance.
Yes.
There is a lack of harmony. Now, I find these things, these traces in all religions very interesting. There's a concept of the supreme being in all religions, whether Abrahamic or other religions. And then there's a belief that something has gone wrong. Something evil has happened. Now, we know what happened in Genesis chapter 3, but they have this, okay, something has gone wrong and we have to fix the problem. We have to fix that imbalance and lack of harmony. But they can't explain it. Another interesting, okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you if you have other, oh, okay. Another interesting thing is when he asked him about, is there a concept of the supreme being? She only talked, okay, there is this mysterious spirit, very powerful spirit in the sky. Again, I think that's how we talked about that in the PowerPoint. I think that's the traces of the original monotheism. But then she moved on to sacred beings and start talking about, I didn't want to talk about them as gods and goddesses, but sacred being, spiritual being that, like these different tribe, they gather at some mountain, and then before coming there, you're supposed to go and try to meet that spirit that is associated with your clan. Again, that totem thing. And they go and maybe they see a woodpecker or a fox or an eagle, and somehow they get revelation teaching from that. Again, you see, that's why these traditional American Indian religion are not text-based, they're vision-based. I don't know, what can you get by looking at the woodpecker or a fox? I have no idea. But what it comes to my mind, again, going back to the book of Romans, if you go to Romans chapter 1 again, and verse 24 and 25, it says, therefore God gave them over in the lust of their hearts to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them, for they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshiped and served the creature rather than the creator. They went after woodpecker and a fox and eagle, and forgot that supreme spirit, which is, we know that it refers to. Anyway, very interesting, very interesting. Any question?
I think I have one.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I went on a walk. I couldn't sit still, so I didn't want to be a distraction. So
Okay.
it was kind of an observation. I noticed she didn't have a rational basis for, like, our rational basis would be like God, like him being an absolute reasonable answer for like the when she said, yeah, humans are like, we are precious. Like, I was like, that rational basis for a Christian were made in the image of God. And she didn't really give a rational basis of how that preciousness, does that make sense? Like, I just thought, I was like, she
Okay.
didn't really explain for a rational basis.
Okay. You know, you find the answer. That's why I love the Epistle of Romans. In the same chapter, chapter 1, if you go a few verses back, chapter 1, verse 21, for even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give him thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools. That's what happens. You become fools. I mean, when you go after these things, you know, I love American Indians. I don't mean any disrespect for them or uh, their culture. It's horrible the thing that has happened to them throughout history. But you have gone after speculation, you know, and don't try to blame white people for everything that has happened to you. You did lots of things by yourself. Uh, it's easy always to blame others for our own problems. Uh, but verse 22, Romans 1:22, answer the question, gives the answer to our question. They become futile in their speculations. They become foolish, and that's what happened. You know, it doesn't make any sense. And don't try to make sense out of it. Because in other words, you cannot make sense out of a nonsense. We can study and to some degree categorize it. But I mentioned this I think in the beginning of the course. An interesting thing, a characteristic of Christian faith is we have systematic theology because you can systematize truth. What you do not have in Islam, in Baha'ism, in Zoroastrianism, in Hinduism, Buddhism, African traditional faith, American Indian tradition, in any Shintoism, you do not have systematic theology because you cannot systematize error. It just fables.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that the answer to the question for the discussion for this week? Or I guess it would have been last week. Is that the common denominator between?
Oh, yeah, that's one of them. There are other things common denominator. Well, another common denominator for all these religion, if you notice in all of them, from Islam even to Judaism that has some roots in not completely, but has some roots in the Old Testament. In all of them, what is lacking is assurance of salvation. Okay. And that to me tells me that these are all false.
Okay.
Why? Because I know myself and I know my fellow human beings that we cannot do it by ourselves. Therefore, if some kind of system of religion, a system of faith, if it is from God, true God, there must be in it some kind of built-in assurance of salvation. And when I do not find that in all of these things, and it's rather interesting for me that all of them lack that, except for Christian faith, biblical Christian faith. That tells me that all of these things, they're wrong. They're not from true God, because true God knows us. And he knows that if left to ourselves, we cannot make it.
Hey, Professor,
Yes.
Just to keep going, why do you think some Christians struggle with their own assurance?
Um, um, Maybe, I mean, I noticed that I've seen people, they struggle with that in my work as a pastor. Um, Usually it comes down to some kind of a um, wrong teaching and false teaching or a kind of a deformed presentation of gospel. Let me explain that. For example, in my working, because I work among the Muslim people, even after they have come to faith, so they have accepted the Lord. Honestly, truly, they have accepted the Lord. They've been baptized. They've been in the church, but they struggle with the concept of grace, because grace is non-existent in Islam. There is no grace. And you are always supposed to work hard to somehow gain approval. So even when they are Christian, they are not sure. They thought, well, hopefully, Lord's willing, we will make it. No, 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 no. We all make it, not because we are very good people, but because of the person that we have put our faith in. Right?
Can you please repeat that question that Jay asked? I'm so sorry, I didn't hear his question.
I think the question was why some Christians struggle with their assurance of salvation. And I was saying that lots of times it's because their background, like even the people, like the ones who come from Islam, or they've been, there are churches, there are groups that they teach that you can lose your salvation, which for me is wrong, because I don't see that in the scripture. This because we don't we can have assurance of salvation because this salvation is a work of God, not my work. I accept that, I accept that by faith. So I need to take the step of faith, but that's not work. Nevertheless, because it is a gift of God, from the beginning to the end, and I'm a receiver. I accept that by faith. Therefore, there is no way to lose it. Again, this book of Revelation, chapter 8, is a wonderful text to respond to that. Paul talks about, the sonship through the Spirit. Chapter 8, verse 16, the Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, heirs, and heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ. It's interesting that he emphasized, he said, we are heirs of God, children of God, co-heirs with Christ. Why does he so much emphasize it? That he's saying the possibility that a person who is truly put his faith or her faith in the Lord Jesus Christ to lose his or her salvation is as much as Christ losing his position as the Son of God, which is impossible. Therefore, we do not lose our salvation, not because we are so good, no, because we are in His hand. Okay, everybody. Well, I think it's time to take a break. Let me see. Time is 8:39. Let's take a break and come back at 8:49. Okay. See you guys. Okay. Oh. Oh, okay, right on time. Well, let's start. I'm still recording. I forgot to even stop it. So that's okay. Now we want to go to Hinduism and study about Hinduism. I like us to first watch the video and then because I'm afraid I just don't want to miss the time. We can go faster with the PowerPoints, but not with the video. So let's watch first the video and then we will go to our PowerPoint. So let me go to share screen. Oh no, not this one. What happened? Oh, are you guys there? Stop share. Okay. Something happened. Just, okay. One moment, let me get the video. Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay. All right. Then here, go to share screen. Okay. Okay, you guys can see that? Yeah, okay. So make sure you are screen sharing and it is recording. So let's go with it.
Hi, folks. I'm Dennis Holy. Welcome to I Believe. Each week, we're on location visiting a different church, synagogue, mosque, temple, or house of worship. This week, we're at the Shiva Vishnu Temple in Landham, Maryland. Welcome.
Shanno mitrasham varunaha, shanno bhavatvaryama, shanna indro brihaspatihi, shanno vishnurukramaha, namo brahmane, namaste vayo, tvameva pratyaksham brahmasi.
I Believe is made possible by the Rotendaro Family Trust, the CTC Foundation, the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington, Americans United, and the National Education Association. Do I call you Sadhvi?
Yes, you can call me Sadhvi.
Thank you so much. Does that have a translation?
Yes, sadhu is a person who has dedicated his or her life to committed to this knowledge, committed to living a life of simplicity and a life of renunciation. Sadhi is the feminine form of sadhu.
Thank you. Is Hinduism, is it a religion, or is it a culture, or is it a way of life?
I would say that it is a view and a way of life that encompasses culture, that is expressed in the culture, and it is a view of life. It has a vision to offer, and it is a way of life because there is a path. There are certain practices that are prescribed to achieve this vision, to understand this vision, to practice and to live the vision.
Was Hinduism, how old is it?
Hinduism does not have a founder. It is not a historical religion or a founded religion like Christianity or Islam.
How far back does it go?
So we don't know really.
Oh.
You know, we can. The latest Indologists that have been researching the Mohenjo-daro ruins have talked about it going back 10,000 years.
So some of the traditions, some of the beliefs of Hinduism have now are written down, right?
Now written down, but it still continues to be an oral tradition.
Oral tradition.
Yes, that is handed down from parents to children, teachers to students, and so one is taught by the parents till one is 12 years old, and traditionally at the age of 12 one goes to a place called the Guru Kula to learn the Vedas.
And what does that mean?
Veda is our book of wisdom that was revealed.
So that's like learning the scriptures. Huh?
Yes, you learn the whole thing. It's memorized completely, and it is orally transmitted.
And that's an awful lot of
Yes.
memorization,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
But do people who follow the Hindu religion and culture and way of life memorize?
Yes.
Whoa.
And you memorize the entire Veda.
So have you memorized the Veda?
Yes, because I have studied it, so I have memorized quite a bit of it.
And how big is it? How big is that? How many?
It's
goes on for
volumes. You can chant it for days on end.
So what would the
Sometimes you do
chant
that.
sound like? What would that sound like?
Om Shanno Mitrasham Varunaha Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shanna Indro Brihaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmavadisham Ritamavadisham Satyamavadisham Tanmamavid.
Let me interrupt and say basically what are you translate for?
Yeah,
us? Just
Sham. Sham means well-being, auspiciousness. May there be well-being for Mitra, the sun, Mitra, it means actually friend, but here the sun is our friend. Varuna, the waters. Then Indra, the ruler of the universe in a certain sense, and an aspect of God, you can say. So may you be happy, may there be, may you be invoked by us. May all of us be well, thanks to your grace. So that is basically the thing. And then it ends with the promise that I will speak the truth. I have spoken the truth. I will speak the truth. I will practice that truth. And so therefore, let us, please protect us. That is basically what it is.
Thank you. And you chanted so beautifully. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I've been thinking about this word samsara.
Mm.
In Hinduism.
Yes.
Tell me about samsara.
Samsara, nowadays, it's a name of a perfume. It's very difficult.
They must have something in their mind.
They might have. But basically, it means a life that keeps on becoming, a life of becoming. Samsara is something that keeps repeating itself. So it's a life of becoming. For example, any human being, when he or she is born, has a whole list of accomplishments to achieve in that given lifetime. First one wants to do this, then after that something else, studies, jobs, relationships, so on and so forth. And after retirement also there is so many things to be done. Buy an RV and go around the country, so many things. So all these things are, it's the whole sum of these pursuits is called samsara, and the effect thereof is also samsara, because the more one is pursuing these external pursuits, thinking that it's going to lead one somewhere, but it's almost like each thing is a dead end. So you go to a dead end, you come back, you go and you come back, and again, as you know, in Hinduism, after this life also you come back, because the original reason why one was born has not been tackled.
So we're talking about a cycle of being born, of living, of getting old, of dying, of getting born, and on and on and on.
On one level.
Uh-huh.
And on another level, even within that life, one wants to become something, keeping on becoming something. So many hobbies, so many pursuits, so many things that one wants to do. All that is samsara.
How about karma? Where does that fit into it all?
Karma is action, the pursuit itself. Because when one wants to get something, if I want to reach out for something that is away from me, I have to act. You know, if I want that bag that is in your hand, I have to reach out. I have to make an effort and take it. So that is karma. The results of that action is also karma, because if I don't put enough effort, I don't reach. You see, so that would be a result that my effort, which was not enough, resulted in failure. So the result is also karma.
Is it good karma and bad karma?
Yeah, you know, we have good karma, we have bad karma. In Sanskrit, the good karma is called punya, because it's just a very, very it's like a physical equation. Anything that you do brings you comfortable situations in the here or in the hereafter, and anything that you do to hurt somebody else or upset somebody else in some way, or hurt another creature, then that also comes back to you as the Sanskrit word for that, the bad karma, is papa. There is no translation.
How do you link the samsara with the karma?
Well, you know that you're really very, very wise in connecting these two, because the karma, the good karma and the bad karma is what keeps the samsara reproducing itself. The good karma is a golden shackle, because it leads you to be born again and have comfortable situations. The bad karma is another kind of a shackle, because again, this whole universe is a field of experience for karma. That is one understanding.
Now, there's a word that I'm not familiar with, although I knew a little bit about samsara, I knew a little bit about karma, but moksha, I don't know. That's new to me.
Moksha means freedom.
Freedom from
anything that you don't want.
Could that be the samsara?
Yes, freedom from samsara, freedom from anything that one does not want in one's life. And if you generalize what one does not want, that usually comes down to limitations. Nobody wants to be limited in any way. So everybody is seeking freedom from limitations.
As you and I are talking,
yes,
and people are listening to us right now, they're saying, well, they're kind of having a philosophical conversation. They're kind of having a psychological conversation. In Hinduism, is there one supreme God?
We don't say supreme. We don't say we have one God. We don't say we have many gods. We say there is only God. Everything is God. Everything is sacred. Hinduism is one tradition where you don't have any kind of a distinction between the sacred and the secular. There is no secular practice. Everything is a sacred practice.
Everything?
Everything. Even bathing, for example, in the morning, when you bathe, you don't just sort of, in America, you just jump into the shower and rush out And this is, the metaphor is like that. I've never heard anybody say, I'm going to walk into the shower. They always say, I'm going to jump into the shower. I don't understand. But in India, the bathing itself is a ritual. Gange cham Yamune chaiva Godavari Saraswati, may all the holy rivers, enter this bucket of water.
So God isn't out there. God is just everything that's around us.
Including you, including me.
We are God?
Absolutely. Non-separate from God.
So when I go into the Hindu temple,
yes,
and I see various shrines or deities,
yes,
what am I seeing in these manifestations?
See, the thing is, if everything is God, it figures that you can invoke this God in anything. You can invoke it as an aspect, as the order, like we have the physiological order. So we can invoke God as space, as time, and in fact we do that. There is a temple dedicated to God as space in a place called Chidambaram. And then there is Kalahasti. In South India, you worship time, because time is God. Time is non-separate from God. Time is produced. Time is a production. Space is a production. So it's like the Big Bang theory, where time and space is part of the whole equation, the whole creation. So everything being non-separate, you can invoke God in any, as a particular aspect, as one of these, what we call the Panchabhutas, the 5 elements. You can invoke God as a particular function. Vigneshwara, the first deity, Ganesha, the elephant, the face of an elephant.
Yeah.
You invoke the one who clears obstacles from the path, the one who takes care of hidden variables, because there are so many hidden variables.
But let me go back now.
Yeah.
It seems to me that in my reading that there's kind of a triumvirate of I don't want to say major deities, but
sure.
Brahma,
Yes,
Vishnu,
yes,
and Shiva.
Shiva, yeah.
We know. So tell me each one of those. Which
those are 3 aspects. If you say that God is everything, so that means God is the creator and God is the sustainer. And when something goes back or ends, like the dinosaurs, they are extinct. So then they have, God is the one who takes it all, resolves. The ultimate resolution is in the same, entity. So from the aspect of creation, you can say Brahma. From the aspect of sustenance, the one that sustains everything, and so that the status quo we need it to continue, you can say Vishnu. From the aspect of that which takes back everything unto itself, we say Shiva. But really, those are not 3, it's not like some kind of a trinity. Those are all the same energy, the same divinity that is expressed, manifest through certain forms and functions.
It seems to me when you mentioned that people come to any god in asking for something, but praising is also important. Huh?
That is the starting point. Is in terms of that prayer is in terms of to be able to praise in terms of that particular god or goddess, and then to be able to in terms of feel blessed with all that is possible.
In this temple, there are many different small altars or shrines or temples within the big temple. What are the various manifestations? Some of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the aspect in terms of in Hinduism is that there are different manifestations or attributions that are given to human beings. Some kind, health, wealth, and wisdom, knowledge. But each one of them, Hindu was able to give a manifestation of a god or goddess, and it could be not even a form. It could be an animal form, or it could be space, it could be time, any and all of those things, since they feel God is everywhere. Everything is God. And so when they are worshipping any one of the manifestations, they are still connected to this Brahman or the God.
Would it be a normal thing that the person who is coming would go to the particular shrine that maybe he or she needed some help with or support with? Is
Yes,
that
yes,
normal
yes.
thing?
In the what I would call as in our worldly life, in terms of when you're looking at in terms of our individual's family life, we are looking at for blessing from gods and goddesses for our life to move forward, to get better in every aspect. So, in fact, if you talk about in terms of education, then there will be a goddess of Saraswati who would endowed with the quality of blessing the people with the education knowledge part of it. Again, it's all as understanding as a personal god or goddess that you would do with that particular deity, same way that we will do it in different deities of a special characters or attributes. It is primarily focused on individual worship with the family, individual by themselves, with the personal god or goddess. There are functions that takes place on special days, special functions where they all gather and get together and celebrate, in a grand fashion. But most of the worship is personal. Even when it is done in a group, it is individually they pray in terms of the particular god or goddess. I think surrendering to the God is one of the major components in terms of the pathways to reach in terms of the spiritual upliftment. A divine spark of God is in you. And so it is the ignorance that is covering the divine spark. So you just have to uncover that to realize that you are one with God. And that is the liberation of the moksha that we talk about in the philosophical level, here and in this life, that you can get it done. And that's the major thing. You don't have to die and go to heaven or any other place. You can realize that liberation right here and now. And that's another beauty in terms of the Hinduism.
See, one thing we have to know about the Hindu cosmology is that, God is not some guy sitting out there in heaven or any other place, some kind of a parallel universe, because if space and time are also God, everything is God, including, God as masculine, as the maker of the universe, and the feminine divinity as the material of the universe. So we don't make a distinction between masculine and feminine. So all the manifestations of divinity, therefore, are happily paired. So you find a consort for everybody. So half of the temple deities are consorts as well. So with Shiva, you have the Parvati, with Vishnu, you have Lakshmi, and you have all these different consorts as well. And then there are incarnations of God when God walked the earth according to the Puranas, and that's why we have it dedicated shrine for Rama. Then we have, like I said, different deities like Ganesha for the removal of obstacles, Saraswati for knowledge. So there are many, it's endless. We can have so many more.
Let me talk a little bit with you about worship in Hinduism. More individual than like in groups.
Congregational,
yeah, congregational or communal.
Yeah.
More individual?
Yes, it's a private affair.
Worship is a private affair.
It's between myself and the person, the name and form that I am invoking. So it can be done by anybody. It's not Hinduism has never been a congregational religion. It is, you can have communal worship, and we do have communal worship. Like, for example, when we have the fire sacrifices, everybody comes and it
big
becomes
holiday or holy day.
It's a holy day, and also it's a particular ritual where fire sacrifices, everybody comes and partakes of that, and participates in that. So it's that everybody participates.
So people come to the temple.
Yeah.
That would be one thing, but maybe at home they have a little shrine.
Yes.
To whatever god they or manifestation of God that they have chosen.
Right.
So they would make offerings at home. They have a little shrine, put incense or flowers or fruit.
It's like when you invoke God in your home, you treat God like a very preferred and special guest. So when you invite a guest into your home, you offer them water. So you offer them perhaps a set of clothes if they're going to stay overnight. Then you offer them flowers. Then you offer them something sweet to drink. Then you offer them something to eat. and then you give them a nice send off. So that is what really the worship, metaphorically is based on.
The worship is kind of joyful, isn't it?
Yes, it's very joyful.
It's sometimes dance.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Oh, I can hear some dancing and music now.
Yes.
Upstairs in the temple. What would be happening?
It is probably the time for the evening worship, the arati, where you invoke and you do the worship and you wave the camphor lamp around the deities.
And what will that produce? Does it produce something in the person who's praying?
Yeah, it is praying. Prayer is a karma, like everything else. It's an action. It has two kinds of effects. One is the visible effect, and the other is the invisible effect. The visible or the direct, immediate effect perhaps is a sense of surrender. You can just, if something is bothering you, you have set it at the shrine, you have dedicated it back, all your worries and all your fears have, temporarily gone away. So that is a certain peace of mind on the visible level. At the invisible level, it produces a certain kind of a good karma called punya.
People who have watched us talk for a half hour, this idea that that God is in everything.
Yes.
That's a tough thing to get your arms around, isn't it? Huh?
Yes, it is.
But it's quite kind of exciting and refreshing if you can do so.
Absolutely.
So what does this faith mean to you? What does being Hindu mean to you?
Being Hindu means something wonderful. It means that the most unique aspect of Hinduism for me is that there is the possibility of freedom, of attaining what one wants to achieve, whether you call it freedom, whether you call it limitlessness, whether you call it a search for some kind of an eternal happiness, whatever you want to, call it, that is accomplishable here and now. You don't have to, have some kind of an afterlife in order to experience what you've been waiting for. Experience God or experience something wonderful or something like that. Eternity is right here, right now, in this moment. So that is what is the best thing that Hinduism has to offer. It's got a highly evolved pedagogy for being able to transmit that knowledge through exposure, through constant exposure to the knowledge. One can understand that, because the whole thing it's based on is sentience. You know that you are. That you are does not come into question ever. If supposing, these lights went off and then we were in the dark and, I said, Dennis, are you here?
Yeah.
So, and you happen to be awake, which you are. Yeah. So you will have to say yes. You cannot say, let me just call up somebody and check up and then get back to you. So that is the premise, that the self is self-aware, self-revealing and self-evident. But what this self is, one comes to a lot of wrong conclusions because of ignorance. And that ignorance can be removed, through understanding. So basically, the moksha is not something to be attained that is away from you. But what you're doing is understanding who you already are.
What do you want people to take away from our conversation?
Just this, that it is something wonderful and it is something that we have to support because of this. It is just very misunderstood in certain areas, and because this one God, many God problems, people don't know. But underneath all the different strains of Hinduism, whether they believe that one is part of God or an aspect of God or non-separate from God, or one believes in the transcendental understanding, I am that which is the cause of the universe. So regardless of those differences, ultimately the fact that everything is sacred and everything is 100% divine is something which does a lot of good for the modern times. These are troubled times, and these are also times where we need a lot of self-image. So this helps the self-image.
Thank you.
Oh, namaste.
Namaste. To learn more about this series.
Okay, let's stop sharing. All right, I'd like to hear your question and comments.
Professor, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Let me see if okay, I'm back. I was actually in my readings thinking about Hinduism, but I kept thinking of the book The Alchemist. Is that a very Hindu type of book? Because it was talking about, like, in the book, like the soul of the world, you are the soul of the world. I kept thinking, is that?
No, I haven't read that book, but I have read some commentary about it. But to be honest with you, I can't remember right now, so I wouldn't be able to help you on that. Alchemist, you know, that term, it's an Arabic term for, you know, in fact, the word chemistry that we use in English comes from the Arabic language, chemia, or an alchemist is a chemist. But in a in ancient time, alchemist was someone who could turn uh, carbon to gold. So that was the ultimate goal of an alchemist. But to be honest with you, I'm not, I read a commentary about that book, but I don't remember. Sorry.
Okay, it's okay.
All right. Anybody else?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I have so many questions. I don't know where to start.
Sure.
But one of the questions I have is, obviously the shrine at home was what they're referring to in our readings, where they're saying that that they need to keep feeding and clothing and washing and, you know, have a place for the god to sleep. That's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can go and worship God or manifestation of God, as they call it, these different gods and goddesses in the temple, or people have their own shrine in their home.
So if they go to the temple, are they doing any of that there? The feeding, the bathing, you know, because I understand it's a nonstop, that they have to continue doing this for their manifestations or their gods.
Well, I think my understanding is it depends on which god they worship. For some of them, they have to bring blood sacrifice.
Oh.
But it depends on which god, because they have so many. And but in general, the idea is you have, by performing whether blood sacrifice or offering food and incense or whatever, they want to appease this deity, and usually it's because they're afraid. They're afraid of these deity, that they will harm them. There is, I mean, in our textbook talks about it. There is one of them is horrible. I mean,
Shiva. Shiva is the destroyer.
and
He
also
gets
Kali.
Kali is the goddess. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's a very scary looking goddesses, and Shiva. So and you know, people leave. I mean, it's interesting to be honest with you, is demonism, and you are supposed to appease these demons by offering them sacrifice or incense or whatever, or your worship, so that they won't harm you, and you want to manipulate them.
You know, it's funny. When I was reading this, I felt the dark. I don't know. You know, I'm not. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not criticizing them, because they're valuable people who Christ loves also. But there was a darkness, and I actually got anxious. I mean, I had to get up and walk away from it because it was so dark.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, and I was very affected by it. But the other question I have, and then I'll let others ask questions. But if someone who is Hindu comes to the end of their life, and it could be someone young. It doesn't even have to be an elderly person, but they, you know, they've been in this pursuit of, you know, what did she said that that you're pursuing, I forget her, I can't find it now, I took too many notes.
Samsara. She was calling it samsara, the pursuit of the sum total of the entire pursuit.
Actually, I think what they are pursuing is that word mokesh,
Moksha.
moksha, the freedom, the liberation. Yeah.
Also the karma, you know,
Yeah.
she's talking about the pursuit of becoming the accomplishments in the lifetime, that the samsara, the accomplishments and the karma related to that.
Yeah.
What happens when they come to the end of their life? They know that it's coming and they haven't accomplished everything.
Well, they don't know what's going to happen. That's something that, you know, all these false religions, they lack. There is no assurance that where you are going to go. But you see, you know, maybe this helps. There are four things that are connected to one another. One is samsara, which is basically, putting it using our terminology, reincarnation. You die and you come back, you die and you come back, you die and you come back. And in fact, if you notice, she tried to justify it by saying that because we don't know why we are born, for the reason that a person is born is not revealed. Well, we know, the scripture tells us why we are born. Man is created to love God and glorify Him. That's simple, you know, from Westminster Confession of Faith. Why is man created? To love God and to bring glory to His name, to enjoy His presence, to enjoy the presence of God, and to bring glory to Him, to love Him, to obey Him. And it's interesting, it starts, and they're based upon the scripture that it starts first with loving Him and enjoying His presence, and then obeying Him, because our God is a person, has a personhood, and wants a personal relationship. But you see, you have samsara, and then you have karma. And karma is basically, is not fate in a sense that we use it in the West. Karma is whatever happens to you is the result of your previous action in your previous life. So at the same hand, it's not judgment, it's not divine decree, but rather it's what you do right now in this present existence will shape your next existence.
So it doesn't shape your existence today, it shapes the next one.
The next one. Now both of these, samsara and karma, are connected together in a sense that they preserve the caste system. That's the thing that is so important in Hinduism. It preserves the caste system that, you know, that I think, let me see the table, it's on page 275 of our textbook that shows the different caste system. I have it on the PowerPoint too. You know, the priests, the Brahmins, and then the warriors and the merchants, the workers, and at the end are untouchables. So that system is preserved. So you have samsara and karma to preserve the caste system. And there was one more thing I was going to say, I forgot.
You said there are four.
Oh, yeah. The fourth thing is that the redemption, that mokesh, say it again.
Moksha.
Moksha.
Yes.
Moksha. Which you then, if you as you go through this, going back, coming and going and coming and going, and hopefully you evolve, then you come to a point that you are released from samsara. Samsara is not something fun. our textbook talks about that. We think reincarnation in a Western mind as a, okay, you have another chance. Well, no, in Hinduism, it's kind of a bondage because you have to keep coming back, and sometimes you don't know in what, you can come back as an insect, as an ant or a cockroach.
Mhm.
Uh, and then, there are horrible thing that is connected with that, because on page 279 of our textbook, it talks about it. The second column of 279 at the upper right-hand corner, it says to shortcut the system and attain a higher standard of their living right now in your current existence would violate the structure of the caste and would incur worse karma upon you. So if you're part of untouchables, well, you don't want to remain at that the bottom of the society. You go work hard, you go study, you get education, you become a doctor or engineer or whatever. But boy, you have done a horrible thing. You have violated the caste system that these karma and samsara are. Their goal is to preserve that. Therefore, in your next coming, you may come back as something as like a cockroach.
So you're saying that if you do something to improve your life, so for example, go to school and become somebody, that affects your next life.
Yeah, negatively.
Better.
Yeah.
But I thought that was the whole idea. They're trying to make it better for the next life.
No, but you're not supposed to violate the caste system.
In this life. In this life, you don't have the choice of moving up in the hierarchy as far as the caste system is concerned.
Thank
So
you.
if you were born like a Shudra, then you will remain a Shudra till you die. And that's what it is. You have no way of moving up to become a Vaishya or a Kshatriya or a Brahmin. There's just no way you could do that.
Okay. And
it's just disturbing to think.
Oh yeah.
That was my thing when I was listening to them talk. I thought that they were presenting a very rosy picture of what actually happens, because I grew up in India. I've seen people. I've seen the fear in them. I've seen there is no uncertainty. And the way she said that, it's what does the religion mean to you? It's wonderful because there's a possibility of attaining what you want. That is such a lie. You really think that a person who's sweeping the street has that freedom to move up? If you marry outside of your caste, they will come and hunt you down and kill you. And that is not just a story. Just go and open up an Indian newspaper and read it, and on any given day. Even within the same caste, you have to belong to a certain group. This group cannot marry that group, even within the same caste. Forget about marrying in between castes. Forget about doing interreligion marriages. So much so that right now in India, you cannot convert out of Hinduism, or people cannot come to you and preach to you. And if you converted out of Hinduism, they will come after you. But if you want to convert back to Hinduism, they will say it's Graha Vapasi, you're coming, it's homecoming. So you're welcome. So you can go that way, but you cannot go out.
Well,
it's just a social pressure that people will come, they will make life miserable for you, so they're afraid.
What's the status of Christians in India? I mean, I always thought that they do have freedom of worship and freedom to practice their religion.
They do. And growing up, so it just depends. There are certain parts in India where there's more persecution than some other parts. There are certain communities where there will be more persecution than some other. So I would just say that I was blessed that I never really faced those kind of situations. While I was growing up, religion was personal and no one really talked about it, no one touched it. So I was the only Christian always in the group of people that school and college and everything. But there are places that Christians are very badly persecuted. and they will come and they will tell you to close the temple, or I mean the church meeting that you're having, and they will not allow you to do any of that. So it just depends on the mood of the people around you, but technically you're free to practice what you want. So Constitution gives you the freedom to do that. Where people follow that, it's up to the people.
Yeah, and I think especially with the current president,
Prime Minister, yeah.
he is very, I mean, strongly.
He's very pro-Hindu. Yeah, Hindu. So some of the Hindus are not in favor of the Hindutva.
Yeah.
Those are two different things.
Yeah.
So what she's talking about is Hinduism, what the radical part of the Hinduism. So it's all, you know, getting their votes in and everything, and it's all politics as usual everywhere. But it's more radical Hinduism.
Yeah, that they want that those radical, they want to turn, from what I read and studied, to turn India from a secular state into a Hindu state.
Yeah,
that's something that people, even from I know, even many Hindus are concerned. I mean, people who are
they are. So in India, traditionally, if you go back historically, there have been major fights between Hindus and Muslims. Christians we're 2% of the entire population. I mean, nobody really knows who we are, where we are. We're a very small community within the larger one, but so mostly it's those two groups that are you know, at odds every now and then.
You know, just on the side, if you were interested to study about the history of church and Christianity in India, there is a book. The history of Christianity in India is very much connected, interestingly, to the church in Persia. In fact, it was a church in Persia who would send missionaries to India. And especially after the Arab invasion of Persia, they send lots of missionaries to India, to China. There's a book written by this prof at University of Chicago on the history of ancient Persia or something like that. I will try to find the exact title for you. It's on Amazon. It just the last time I checked, it was about a year ago. It was very expensive, about $120. And I had contact with the guy, the doctor who wrote the book. A very, very good man. I said, you know, I'd like to read your book. I can't afford it. It's too expensive. But the church in India is very much connected to the church in Persia and to Apostle Thomas.
Yes.
Because traditionally Thomas went to India.
That was South India.
South India. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's where Christianity came.
So there are a lot more Christians in South and East India. Where I come from in the north, there are fewer Christians there. And
when you say north, which part are you talking?
So I'm a little bit north of New Delhi, to where the mountains are and where the four most holy places of the Hindus are. They all originate up in the mountains where I come from in India. So
yeah, I've been in India back in 1979. In fact, that was when I just left Iran. I thought at the moment to go to a school at India. And in fact, I remember this experience. I registered, in fact, at a college called Ramjas College in New Delhi.
New Delhi, yeah.
New Delhi. And I never forget this experience. The first day when I walked into the campus and our textbook, let me try to find the picture for you to tell you. I saw this thing, I saw this symbol. I didn't know anything about Hinduism and what's going on. I said, God, these guys are Nazi, because they had this.
Oh, yes, swastika.
they had the swastika there.
That is their very holy symbol.
Yeah.
But it's a reverse of the
Yeah,
swastika.
yeah. And it's called, well, actually, you know, the Nazis, Hitler and his gang got these ideas from India, and they
Yes.
wanted to have some kind of ideology behind their movement.
Well, I think it's because of the Aryans and the coming of that. And if you look at how they came and the history of the Aryans, they think they came to India, and I think maybe that's why Hitler took it from.
And
But
that symbol, no, I can't find the picture. I wasn't.
It's a reverse swastika.
Yeah, it's a reverse, and it's called actually the wheel of life, because if you bend the corner, it can move like a wheel, and they call it a wheel of life. And then you know, Hitler got his idea from that. But
Professor, one thing that they did not mention, and which I think is worth mentioning, is the concept of washing away of sin, which I find very interesting, and which you've probably heard of the Magh Mela, the Kumbh Mela that happens. Madonna also went there one time.
Yeah, in the river Kang,
in river Ganges. Yes, so there's the holy confluence, they say, of 3 rivers that meet. And my husband is actually from that city where this happens. And they say if you wash yourself over there, you take a dip in it, your sins are washed away.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting, that they would have a concept of washing away of sin by taking a dip in a polluted river. But the washing away of sin is a very interesting concept. And they don't want to talk about it because they're talking about pap or sin as, you know, you have good karam and bad karam, and all of that is, you know, part of life. But there are people, and Melanie, to your question, there are people who will go to this place while, if they know they're going to die, and they will just stay there, and a whole industry has come up around this, because before they die, if they can take a dip in that river, or when they're dead and they're cremated, if your ashes are dipped in that river, you can get moksha.
Yeah, that's right.
And the whole thing is about getting moksha, and the priest, they have the power to tell you what you need to do to get moksha. And no one ever knows that she was saying, oh yeah, all Hindus read the Vedas and everything. They have no idea.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
Like Muslim. Majority.
It's in Sanskrit. Nobody even understands that language anymore.
Yeah.
So I have Hindu friends. They'll know parts of it, translated form, but they've never read anything. They just know if there is a function, they will call a pandit or a priest, and they will do exactly what the priest will tell them: get this, get that, throw this, throw that, now put this, now put that. And he'll be chanting some mantras on the side. They have no idea. The whole thing is to get moksha. What she said, that it's wonderful because you can attain what you want and you can get out of this cycle. It is just not true, because these people are stuck. And that's why Buddhism, I mean, you'll go into next, that's why Buddhism came. And the other thing that caught my attention was she said that ignorance is removed on the basis of this understanding. And I thought, oh, that sounds like Gnostic thing. Who knows what this understanding is, or this knowledge is?
Yeah,
no one knows it.
The secret knowledge. Yes.
Yes. Again, I'm sorry. It was just like, I was very excited to hear this, because this is the rosiest picture of Hinduism that I've ever heard.
Of course. That's what they want to present. The video on Islam, it's the same way. You know, I like this video because it presents from their perspective.
Yes.
So that in a way it's good, but of course,
this is Hinduism in United States.
Yeah, that's right. It's a
different version in India.
Sure. Go ahead.
Washing away of sin and going to, and I didn't hear the name of the river, but going to this river that you're referring to before sunrise.
Ganges.
It's the I didn't
Ganges. Yeah.
Yeah. number of famous singers and actors have gone there. It's a filthy river from what I.
Every 12 years, they have this huge gathering of millions of people. They build a city on that riverbed, and people just stay there. There are sadhus, there are, you know, and priests, and they go and they give offerings. They live there, they wash in that river, and it's considered to be like, you know, their Hajj.
Yeah.
In no better comparison.
Do they charge? Do they charge to do this?
Of course.
Trying to, so you pay to have your sins washed away, or you
yes
just throw some remains of your loved ones into the river. But if it was that easy to, and I can't say that word the way you do, the mosh,
moksha, yeah.
But if it's that easy, why doesn't everyone just go get the moksha? And if they do, then they have become what they have set out to become, but they know inside that they haven't. Is that correct?
That's right, because like Professor said, there is no surety of salvation. Yeah. You can do all of these things, but you never know. You might have missed that one thing and you'll come back as a mosquito. I don't know.
And also remember, you know what, Melanie, what you're asking, which is understandable, you're asking logical questions.
Yes.
But do not expect logical answer from these kind of faith. There are all kind of self-contradiction within them. Mm-hmm. But on the concept of washing away your sin, you see that. You can find that in Islam. You know, the concept that before you pray toward Mecca, you have to wash, you know, your forehead, your hands, your arms, your feet. Of course, they have copied lots of that from Judaism, mm-hmm. especially from the Essenes sect of Judaism. But that the whole, again, all these things shows that man knows, human mm-hmm. being knows, there is something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And if I want to go before this supreme being, whoever you call it, I have to be cleansed. Now they go and do all these kind of stuff, but they forget the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ who cleanses away our sin. Yeah. Now, but you know, why can't they just buy this thing, buy that redemption? Well, you see, it's the same idea we have had that in Christianity within the Roman Catholic Church. The concept of indulgences. You know, we studied that in church history, Jay. You know, selling indulgences, a good business. And the thing that made Pope angry was not so much the theological ideas, was that Luther was hurting their pocket, and that made them angry. Of course, it hurted their power too, but that was the issue. And I think I wanted to mention. Now, you guys can look at the PowerPoint yourself, or if there are questions, we can talk about them next week. But also, you know, they said Hinduism is an oral religion, and it wasn't until 16th century mm-hmm. then they put things on writing, and that was in response to Islam. Islam was growing in India, and there was this threat of Islam. So in order to respond to Islam, they needed to have some kind of a text. Let me also say this last thing before we finish. This whole thing, samsara, karma, and all these things, the moksha and the redemption, I truly believe, you know, because this thing is an oral tradition, this was built up and fabricated by the defenders of the caste system, those who benefit from caste system, to keep the masses of people under bondage. Because once you instill this idea in the mind of people that, oh, don't you dare try to break this caste system. If you do that, next life you will come back as a fly. Well, they wouldn't do it. So in other words, I think there is a political and economical interest behind this. Now they put all kind of veneer of religious things over it, but it's a political and economical interest.
Gandhi came out in a big way against the caste system.
Yeah.
And
And
he
killed
was
him.
yeah. And the one who wrote the Constitution of India, he was from the lower caste, Ambedkar. And but I mean, we're all people. The whole thing I see as we look through different religion, the one theme I see is there's such a longing in humans to connect to God. There's such a longing to just find that, but they go after every other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And here God came down and reached out to us, and we didn't see the light.
Yeah. Last thing, let me, I promise to finish with this. You know, when he talked that about, you know, the three aspects, you know, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and she said, in fact, I was glad that she said that this is not Trinity, because you know, and she's right, definitely this is not Trinity, because in my talk with Muslim clergymen, some of them, they when they want to attack Christianity, and especially the doctrine of Trinity, they say this doctrine of Trinity has been influenced from, you know, ancient religions such as Hinduism, and in fact they go to this you know, the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and you know, there is no comparison. You know, in fact, when you talk to a Hindu priest, will tell you, no, these are not three distinct persons. They are manifestation of the same kind of spiritual power. That's all there is to it.
Professor, have you heard of a book called Two Babylons?
Oh yeah.
That's an old book, very difficult to read kind of English, but it's at least to me, it was not a very easy read, but it just kind of takes all of the world religion and kind of shows it back to the origin of all of these false religions, to Babu and
That's
to what was his
Tower of Babel.
Tower of Babel, and the king, what was his name?
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Hey, Babylon, like Nebuchadnezzar?
No.
No.
Babel. He was, and it says that he was a mighty hunter of men.
I know who
How
you're
can I? Nimrod. Yes.
Nimrod. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting book. How it, I don't even know if it's, you know, if that's right or not, but it's kind of interesting how it kind of takes it all back to.
Well, on that, in fact, I'm glad that you brought that up. You know, the Tower of Babel wasn't just some kind of you know, just some kind of a monument, but in fact, it was a religious center. It was a place of worship and contact between human beings and demons, and that was a thing that, you know, it's interesting. From there on, you find Tower of Babel and Babylon always associated with demoniac. And there, I haven't read that book, but I'm sure it's an excellent book. But I've read some other books that they trace the religion back to the Tower of Babel. And you know how, because these different human groups, they had these gods and goddesses which were demons manifesting themselves. When they were scattered, they took those with themselves, and that's it's from there we have degradation of the original monotheism.
Would you give the names of the books that you were talking about, Professor?
Which one?
The you said that trace back religions to the Tower of Babel.
Oh, okay. I have to find it. And
yeah, I mean, you can write it, but
I send it to you later.
And one last thing that I said I found was very interesting, where she was saying that time and space is a production or is produced. then question would arise, then who produced it?
Yeah, again, yeah. You find all kind of inconsistency.
You talk to them, they go in circles.
Yep.
It's just, I'm not sure if anyone of you have heard Deepak Chopra,
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. He had that guy had number of interesting debate with John MacArthur, and
Oh.
MacArthur just destroys him. The wrong person to have a debate with. But yeah, I know. And it's interesting. I was listening one time to MacArthur. He's saying that this guy claimed that he's God, but then he's sitting next to me. He's a little guy apparently, and he's it's a very strange God that's just sitting right next to you.
But then if you're God, then why do I need moksha?
Yeah.
Why do I need to be liberated? I am God.
Yeah.
And what do I need to be liberated from?
Yep.
And as a God, why do I do wrong things?
Yep. Yeah.
But if you look at the gods, and not just in Hinduism, I go into the Greek gods and the Roman gods, boy, are they bad.
Well,
I
not
mean,
only them. In Islam, Allah, it says it right there in the Quran. He can mislead you.
yeah.
He can lead you to the wrong path if he's just in a bad mood.
Very interesting.
Okay, guys. Good class and good discussion. I hope you will have a wonderful week and see you guys next week. I will build up. I know I need to put the lesson for next session and the following session. I will put them on top. Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Bye, ma'am.